welcome back to Flagrant Sports. Today we have with us JDew. JDew, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yes. So what's up, everybody? Glad to be here at Flagrant Sports. My name is JDew. I live in the upstate of Greenville, South Carolina area. Well, got a wife and 3 kids. Most people recognize me, however, for none of the stuff at home. It's all the stuff I do outside in the world. And a lot of that for the last dozen years or so has been Greenville Drive baseball, as well as Clemson basketball. So I'm the MC for those things for a long time. A lot of people know that, but also I've been an entrepreneur for most of that time as well. I have a one-man Black History show. So there's a lot of MC entertainer type spiel behind what I've got going on.
Awesome. Nice.
All right, so what kind of got you into working for the Greenville Drive? Like, what made you want that job?
Great question. So there's a premise there that is actually incorrect. So there was that job, 2 premises actually. One of them is that the job did not exist before I had it. I was the inaugural person in the role that was the producer of game entertainment as well as the MC type role. So I did start working there first as a intern. Actually, in the opening season of 2006, I was running camera. So I was in that fan cam phase where you're in people's faces, running all around with the kids and the fans, doing kiss cam, getting up in your face with your girl, that type of stuff. So that's what I did opening season. And in the middle of 2007, the second season, I was asked to come on full time to run the entertainment program. So this is everything from the booth aspect, from PA to music to replay to cameras, and also be the MC. That was where I kind of filled that role in 2007. And I was singing and dancing, playing, throwing t-shirts with the kids and doing games on the field. So I was asked by them to take the role. The powers that were at the time at the ballpark asked me after a game in the middle of the season, hey, will you stick around after the day game tomorrow and chat with us about coming on full time? So that's kind of how it started. So I guess I was in the wrong place, wrong time. I don't know. Like, I was just minding my own business, and they asked me to stick around. So that's how it all started.
That's really cool, though.
It seemed like a great job.
So
what
somebody had to do it, I guess. So
what will you miss the most about working for the Drive?
It's interesting. So I did not grow up being a baseball guy. I'm not a baseball purist by any chance. I played Little League, as many folks did, but I wasn't that good. So my role really became the MC, and you could commonly ask me any given night that we had a game, 70 home games for minor league baseball in our division. You could ask me that night after the game, go see my friends, go see my mom, go see my girl, whatever, or the next day, like, hey, who won last night? How'd we do? I didn't know the answer. Number one, there's tons of games. And number two, my back was to the game and my face was to the fans. So what I miss the most, even to this day, is all the people. I miss talking to people. I miss becoming friends with people who came to games a lot of the time. I miss, stealing people's popcorn and being funny about it, and jumping in, sitting next to them and embarrassing them with their girl and putting it on the big screen, point blank type of lead up where they didn't know what was coming or they had to earn something, win a prize. So I miss all the interaction with the people. Baseball is fine, but my job was to make sure everybody had a good time. So that's who I miss. I miss those people.
Totally. Yeah, absolutely. And so how long were you working there before you became the host?
Halfway through the opening season, 06, when the Red Sox team that is now the Drive moved downtown to Fluor Field at the West End, I was there. So I was there the opening season, and there was a different MC the opening season. And in 2007, between 06 and 07, I was at the audition for the national anthem. And I was there as a production guy, and I was helping interview people, introduce them, exit interview after they finish singing, that style of Idol or Fear, X Factor or something like that. We were kind of doing that. And the folks who were in charge of running it at the time, who were full-time, who I was very well acquainted with, having worked with them in the opening season, were like, man, that kid on the camera, he's pretty good on the mic. Why don't we try to put him in front of the fans? So that's how it transpired, and I transitioned my spots from behind the camera to in front of the camera. And so I started doing that April of 07, and halfway through the season they said, hey, let's talk about you staying around during the day as well. So I made that, I'm an entrepreneur now, so I say it to be funny, but I made that mistake of going from my specialty to having a full-time job, which of course I was thankful for. I needed the money and all that, but I started working all day, and I was like, wow, y'all will be working too hard for me. So eventually after about 3.5 years of that, I went back to just being the MC, and I wasn't working full-time during the day anymore.
And when you were younger, say in high school or any time before, did you have any like certain passion for hosting or being on a mic in front of a camera or anything like that that led into that? Or did you just kind of find that as you got older?
It's interesting because I did not know like the profession of emceeing or hosting things was like a thing on a local level. I understood game shows, that's for sure. And that's probably the only type of job that could get me out of being an entrepreneur. If Drew Carey like kills over and Steve Harvey can't do it anymore, then boom, I'm the guy. But I did not know that a lot of the things that I do now and have gotten paid money for and gotten a lot of respect in the community around, didn't know they existed. I probably went to 5 minor league baseball games in my life prior to going to about 700 straight. So I did not. So in school, there was a background of performance, however. So a lot of what I'm historically involved with when you think of school and community work outside of sports or MC work was theater. So class clown stuff and theater stuff and maybe speech contest in school. And I was involved with that type of stuff. And my mom forced me to be in all that mess, and I didn't like it at first, but then I got good at it. I really did. And I was winning some awards from time to time, especially in high school. And, that continued through college as well.
Gotcha. That's awesome.
And then, let's see, I guess last question about the drive. Do you have like a certain just memory or moment from a game that sticks out?
Man, I got so many. So I get asked these questions from time to time, and they're not anything that anybody would assume. So I'm gonna give you the behind the scenes look real quick, fellas. So in one of the most inspirational moments of the entire time I was there would have been the summer of 08. So this is, I guess, around July or August in 2008, and the Olympics were going on. Summer games were in China, if you guys remember at that time. And we were not able to watch everything live because it was overseas. So they were playing Michael Phelps winning all these races in prime time, but we have baseball games in prime time. And as soon as we finished a game at one moment and we had just said thank you, everyone started to get up, I remembered, and probably all the guys in the booth were probably watching it on some of the TVs that we couldn't see while we were down working the game, that Michael Phelps was swimming. So I called up on the radio, hey fellas, flick the TV on. So we turned the big screen to live NBC television or whatever it was playing on. And that was the race where Michael Phelps ended up, he was behind, and he ended up, and now it's a meme and everything, where he ended up winning by, what was it, 1/100th of a second or 200ths of a second, because he took that one extra last stroke. So there was about 7,000 of us potentially who all got up and went to leave, and we went to turn because we saw Michael Phelps on the board, and we turned the sound on. So we had just gotten done with, I think, fireworks. I think this is a Friday night. So I'm on the field. So I'm actually in the middle of the field at the time. So I have a full panoramic view of everyone. And he was behind. You can see the marker. You can see those little, those little flags like doing this back and forth, and he's losing. But right in that last moment, he hit the wall, and everybody screamed and cheered. And I yelled on the mic, he did it. And it was like USA, all this great moment, and then everybody turned and left, So that was it. So that was a really cool thing. And the other experience though, like, let me go on the flip side. The flip side would be doing the flipper race on the field with 2 contestants. And there was 2 ladies who were having themselves a good time. You know what I'm saying? I'm trying to explain to them how this is going to work. And I'm being very, very literal and step by step. We've only got 90 seconds to be on that field during inning breaks. So we've got to be efficient. Most of the time, probably 75% of the time, I'm dealing with kids. So I'm really, I got a routine for it. And I'm giving it to the ladies, pop, 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 pop. I'm also watching out of the corner of my eye to make sure we're not at 3 outs where we have to run. So it gets pretty intense for a short period of time. And these 2 ladies are back there having a great time. And they just stopped me in the dead middle of me explaining, like, kick your feet up, hold them up high. You're going to run 3rd, 2nd, 1st. You're running 1st, 2nd, 3rd. You'll cross in the middle. I'm explaining all this. And they're like, hey, calm down, man. Calm down. We're good. We got it. And I was like, you know what? I kind of, perturbed me for a second. But I was like, I apologize. I'm normally talking to kids. I'm sure you guys got it. Just make sure you paid attention to everything that I said. And I just left them alone. Yeah. Well, we get out there, and the lady who's running from 3rd, 2nd, to 1st does not pull her feet up, does not hold her flippers up, and she bites it 2 times real hard. Mm-hmm. And the 2nd time, I was like, man, that one looked like it really hurt. She's on the 3rd out there, and she's coming toward me. She rounds first base, coming toward home. And she passes me, and she nails it for the 3rd time. So now I'm looking at the clock, I'm looking at the pitcher, and I'm like looking at the the pitcher, because I'm realizing what time. My brain is playing a lot of games at one time. I got my girls out there, got the mascot, I'm yelling stuff to the fans, and I'm like, look, she probably hurt this time. Mm-hmm. And I start running toward her. So her feet are toward me, her head is toward home, she's out cold, it seems, in the grass, headed toward home. And I run toward her because we got to help her get up and get off the field. And I realize she's wearing these white capri pants and my blue flippers and all that. And I can see that she peed herself all over herself. And I saw that. And at that moment I said, nope, that's what you get. And I turned around and left. And I ran back to the tunnel and got off the field. And my girls got her up or something. I just left her because I was like, I'm not dealing with it. So she gets back to the staging area. She is very sober at this point, in pain from busting her knee on the ground or something. Mm-hmm. And I see her just back there sweating, wearing flippers in the inner tube and a snorkel. She's like, get this all off me. And she just drops trout, just takes her pants off and just wrings them out. And I'm looking at her 10, 15 feet away, and I'm like, nope. And I just leave again. So I just go and hang with the fans for a while. Just hang with the fans. So those are my 2 opposite ends of the spectrum kind of memories. In addition to all the fun baseball, all the great players that you meet, all the ones that make it to the bigs, their parents that hang out and come to watch them play, and you become friends with them because you know who they are. A lot of good stuff, a lot of good memories.
Sheesh, that's insane. Are there any big standout players you got to meet while they were down there?
Sure, yeah. So some players that, it's fun because, like I said, the players, we're such an, minor league baseball is less pressure. Mm-hmm. And they have more fun, and they're generally younger. So, these guys are coming to us playing at 17 to 23 years old. A lot of the times, first year out of high school, first year out of college ball. And you get to meet their families, you get to meet their girlfriends, right? They got a girlfriend in every city we play in, for sure. I always made the joke they had 2 girls per city we played in. And we had a league with 14 teams, 14 cities. So, it stands out to me for different reasons. But one of the people that I became, acquainted with, and his family, his mom, and we were buddies, is Anthony Rizzo. So Anthony Rizzo made it big, right? Yep. He made it all the way to the bigs, and he moved from the Red Sox organization to the Cubs, playing first base, but he played first base for us in Greenville. Mm-hmm. And I sat next to his mom, hung out with her. During the All-Star break, he made the All-Star team, and we went to West Virginia as a staff and some of the people to watch and to go to meetings and stuff like that. And me and his mom hung out on a bus. Like we took a tour of a coal mine or something. Like, so me and his mom like hung out for a while and everything. So that was cool. It's also interesting to see their journeys and their personal lives, because you start to learn that on the inside. It's not about, I could never tell you their RBI, their ERAs, anything like that.
Mhm.
But I did know about his struggle with cancer, because he had cancer. His grandma had cancer, and they fought through that. He took a season off or something, like went to play, couldn't play, came back, overcame that, and made it all the way to get himself a World Series ring. That's real crazy, cool stuff. But there's a couple guys like that. Josh Reddick was a cool dude, and his dad was nuts. His dad was loud and always at the games, and I remember those two guys kind of specifically. And it's also interesting to understand how many players are foreign guys, and you may know them and they recognize you, and you have to work with them from time to time for promotional or marketing materials that sponsors need or something. But like, we talk to each other pretty slow because they don't speak English, and I'm not smart enough to know Spanish. So those things stick out too. So a couple of cool things like that. Yeah, a couple cool people.
Gotcha. That's cool.
Yeah, I think for a minor league team, the Drive have a great atmosphere. It's really cool.
Yeah, so it really is a very special place. A lot of ballparks in the U.S. historically and once again now are being revitalizing a downtown community, and that's great. And we have as long as it's good weather, we're just having a great time out there at Fluor Field in the West End. We've got a great trolley system, great amenities, great seats no matter where you are. We only go about 14 rows up. So there's lots to do there. It's very inexpensive in our community. Taking a whole family out there and buying tickets and buying food, is about equivalent or cheaper than going to the movies and doing the same thing. And it's longer, actually. So you get to enjoy things for an hour or two longer, and it's equivalent or even less money to maybe have a way better experience. So yeah, it's been great. It's been great for our community, and I'm very thankful to have been a part for so long.
Yeah.
And we know you do One Voice as well. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
For the last 10 years, I have been doing a one-man Black history show. It's called One Voice, and it is a journey through about 180 years of Black American history through several different character voices. So I call it One Voice because it's one-man show. It's just me. There's nobody else to blame it on, if things go bad. And what I'm doing is I'm doing the actual words of several iconic Black folks that we all know on basically a national and international level, all American. Yeah. But there's also interspersed video that introduces us to some folks from a local community, and they tell their story, which is some flavor of a civil rights struggle type story. And so it's been wonderful for me to do that, and to play Frederick Douglass, and to do MLK, Muhammad Ali, Barack Obama, and actually do their words, dress up like them, try to sound like them, do my best. And it's been very well received. I've had a lot of fun with that for a long time.
Yeah, nice. I watched your One Voice special a couple weeks ago, and when you pulled up the clip of the Greenville Library sitting, I never heard of that, so that was really cool.
Yeah, what I really was astounded about when I set out to do this program, I had already gotten one of the testimony video vignette videos in the can. It was way before I had the idea of doing a show, but I was a part of somebody else's community project that got a testimony just like the one you mentioned. And what I realized is, like you, I lived in a town where there had been a story, a struggle, a success, a failure, and that's not what I knew from school. That's not what they told me. So, or they glossed over, or I wasn't paying attention, all of the above. But what I realized was, man, there is a struggle, especially in the South, in what has historically been the Deep South, and what that meant to race relations, or the lack thereof, was their story. And these people are not, it's not ancient history. These people are still shopping at the grocery store and being seen in the bank, and you are bumping into them, when you're, go to church or whatever. That these people still have stories, and that story of Jim Crow and segregation era is alive and well in the memories of people who are still here. And that's why I think it's so impactful, one, and to hear them tell it where it's not tweetable, it's long form. Let's just let them talk. And what would they say, and how do they recall it? And let's see their pictures, and look at the newspaper articles and have them tell you what happened. And you're like, wow, this is really, could be really heavy stuff and very impactful.
Oh yeah.
Definitely. And then also, so I watched your conversation with Hobart Lewis, the Greenville County Sheriff. What are like the biggest points you want people to take away from that conversation?
The biggest thing that I was able to do there was to prove that no matter who you are, the best ways to start healing or legislative change, if you want law change, is to have conversations. And I think protests, for instance, which are not specifically conversations, do get a point across, but they lead to conversations. So I think, I really want to thank the sheriff who was able to come in and willing to talk with me, because whether or not I agreed with everything he said, which maybe I agreed with some things or didn't disagree or had a completely different opinion, I'm not law enforcement. I do not consider myself an activist. It was not a debate. Or I wasn't challenging it. I just wanted to know what he thought, and I thought the community would enjoy that as well. I think the biggest thing to take away is check in with your neighbor about what they think, about what their experience is. We're talking about One Voice, we're talking about Greenville County Sheriff, just check in with them. And rather than yell at them, rather than retweet everyone else, rather than find a bunch of people who share your opinion and then maybe continue to play that tape over and over and over in your head, or maybe on your social media platforms and walls, check in with your own neighbors. There are people who live on your town, in your street, maybe even in your home, that have different opinions than you. And if you can have a civil discourse and back and forth, you can probably resolve a lot of things in your own life. I'm talking about a regular non-activist person. You can probably help resolve things in your life and in other people's lives by just getting to understand the perspectives and the goals and wants and needs of the other people around you, rather than too much of a fight.
I think that's one of the biggest things we're missing that causes so much conflict too, is instead of talking to people, we take what we see on news sources and Twitter and all of this, and we kind of substitute real conversations for that, which has become a big issue.
Agreed, 100%. And I think, to be honest, there's a lot of people who actually do have some form of conversation going on in dialogue with people they know, but at the same time, they're out here land blasting people through social media. And it's like, I'm not sure how much of that we need, but we probably need to continue to have those good conversations one-on-one with people in our lives who we consider our neighbors, or who they consider us their neighbors. Literally, proximity in your town, in your own local legislation. You can call your sheriff. That's what I did. I literally asked 3 people if they had his number. Someone gave me his cell. I called him. We sat down a week later and we had a great conversation.
It was a really good thing.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And like, I went to the protest the Clemson football team put on a few weeks ago, and it was really good because there was all different types of people just talking, and it was great. But it really wasn't shown on the national news because they've just really been showing the other side of it.
Yeah.
And not
sure. Yeah. When, of course, there's a sensationalism that is always going to be a part of the news. They are there to sell. They have certain agendas, which we've all figured out. Me later than most people figured out later on in my adult life. Oh, I didn't know there was a left and a right and a conservative and a liberal platform for news. I just didn't even know. I didn't pay attention that much. It proves I'm not really an activist. But I still think whether or not it makes it to the national news, most of my conversations with my friends and family that have helped and will continue to help the life I live, the community that I'm involved with, are not newsworthy. They shouldn't be. It's just conversations I have with people, and we learn to understand each other better. And we learn to understand we didn't come over in the same ship, but we're in the same boat now. That's really a place that we've all got to remember, that I can't hold you accountable for things that you did not actually do. You should not hold me accountable or victim to things that I did not actually do, or, it's just, what do we do now? There are gaps, there are differences, there are problems. Well, starting today, what should we do? And I think that first thing is a conversation with people
Yeah,
definitely, for sure. Mm-hmm.
So, what do you think Martin Luther King or someone like him would say about the state of America today?
I think Martin Luther King was an activist, and he was very much, he felt called to, by God. He felt called by God to help poor people, help people who were misrepresented, underrepresented, and of course, help the Black community, a part of the world that he was a part of. And so I think that we can see potentially what he would still be doing or still be saying based on the people who are around him. Once again, he was contemporaries with several people who are still here, including Jesse Jackson. Jesse Jackson is from Greenville, and Jesse Jackson rolled real deep in Martin Luther King Jr.'s posse and cohorts. So I think that is a representation of what he would still consider or be doing. I think some of the supporters that were with him and what they were doing, same thing. There's people in the political scene who were friends with him. For instance, Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders was loosely, at least, as far as I can tell, involved with the civil rights movement, the way Dr. King set it up. So I think that's also telling to what Dr. King would be voting for potentially today, socially. He said he would never run for office, but a lot of his contemporaries think that he may have, had he still been alive in the 70s and 80s. But that's one thing. So I think that the beloved community that Dr. King talks about we're not there. I think June 2020 proved that to more people than it ever proved it before. And today, a day in, whenever you're watching this, but today, as we record this, it's July, the beginning of July, the Civil Rights Act of 1964 was passed today, July the 2nd. And that was strategic legislative work that Dr. King was going for around the March on Washington in 63, where he gave the Dream speech. And so those things are what he was working on. The equality of work opportunity, the equity that's involved with freedom to vote and to use public systems. Those all are things that he was going for. But there's a lot of things that we don't talk about that he was also going for in the mid to late 60s. Very anti-war. He did not think the government was being responsible at all with its money. And there are many people who still agree with that, no matter what side of the fence you may be on. But so it's interesting to speculate on what he would be doing now.
Yeah. So which of your 6 impressions are you most proud of?
So yeah, I do, as I mentioned, James Weldon Johnson, a couple poems, Frederick Douglass's autobiography, the first chapter of his first autobiography. MLK, I do 2 different speeches, and one I'm working on, so hopefully soon 3. Muhammad Ali, acting like Floyd Mayweather, Conor McGregor, type stuff, running his mouth. Everybody knows him for that. And Barack Obama's Yes We Can speech. I love them all for a lot of different reasons. And I love to think about the impact that these men made in the world through their gifts. But honestly, I think one of them that has the most impact to people, the way I've set it up in my show, and even when it comes in my show, is probably Frederick Douglass. Because when I do Frederick Douglass in my show, when I'm doing the whole show, so some people have seen it, Frederick Douglass, some people have not. If they just watched the thing that we did on Juneteenth of 2020, Frederick Douglass was not in that. But when I do Frederick Douglass, it starts the show off pretty early, helping folks get into place without opinion, without commentary. It's just his words. It helps people understand that, wow, the world was a lot different. And it was not good for Black people. Legislative, the economic, education, all of those things come into the first chapter of his first story. And race relations, all, beatings, public humiliation, all of that is in there in his first 10 minutes, talking through his childhood. And he experienced these things as a kid. He's telling you what he remembers with first understanding things at like 5, 6, 7 years old or something. And it's really horrible. And it puts people in a place where they start to ask themselves intrinsic questions. And that's what's important. So I think that's a beautiful way to start my show. Very impactful. And as hard as the story might be to hear, it's very good for me and the world to be able to be reminded. That's how things actually worked in the enslavement of the southern states and states that weren't so southern, like Maryland, where he's from, that had slaves.
Yeah, your MLK renditions were amazing. I never really listened to like the whole I Have a Dream speech, only parts of it. So that was the first time I really heard it word for word. And
yeah,
it was really good.
Sure.
Well, thank you. I'm glad you stayed awake. That's the main thing, right? So, it really is amazing. What's crazy about the whole situation is there may be a racial gap between me and you guys, but in terms of educational programming that I came through from childhood, middle school, high school, college, I never heard it either until I went and researched it myself. I never heard it. I never read it. I don't know how I escaped that in school. I don't know why. You have different opinions on whether or not it's important, but it's very impactful, and it changed the trajectory of a lot of things in this country and the world. And there's a lot of people who have not actually read it or heard it.
Yeah. I think that's kind of a shocking thing too, because I know we never heard it either. And I know in all my years of school, I've never heard it.
Yeah, we know a couple tweets. Yeah, you know a couple one-liners, a couple tweets. You've heard the I Have a Dream section, which is only the last quarter, the last fifth. Yeah. But the whole thing, which you can read in 10 minutes, is very powerful, very impactful, very important. And you're like, I've never even heard this. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And like most textbooks, it's just like that little end section, and then they just move on to the next one.
You just move on to the next program. Same thing as, I live in the South. I live in South Carolina. So the Civil War, when I grew up in California as a kid, the Civil War was, I don't know, maybe 3-4 days of content. Mm-hmm. And that's it. I moved to South Carolina, and all of a sudden the war ain't even over out here. So I'm like, whoa, this is not what I thought from school. You just learn things. Regionalism, it plays into a role as well. There's that. There's the fact that Black people are 30% of Greenville, where I live, but 13% of America. And there's a lot of high concentrated volumes of African American people, Black people in certain cities and certain areas of those cities. So sure, there's lots of people of the majority dominant culture who are white, who I don't really know that many Black people, all sorts of things.
I think schools definitely have an interesting approach. And we just graduated this year. We're 2020. And even stuff like that, or even significant things that happened historically or are happening, they don't really cover as much as I think they should. Like stuff like that, I Have a Dream speeches like that. Like with 9/11, I know they don't mention it anymore on September 11th.
Really?
Stuff like that. Mm-hmm.
See, of course, that was so that was, speaking of graduating, that was my senior year of high school, 2011. So I remember it, it's one of those defining moments. Certain generations have them, from the Challenger exploding, the generation before me, because so many people watched it at school, crazy, from JFK being assassinated, whatever those things are. 2001, September 11th was it for my generation. And I was a senior in high school, and that changed the game, changed the world. And yeah, if you don't understand that, I'm not saying that, and here's another thing I have about being an entrepreneur, about being personal responsible. I love what you guys are doing, is I educated myself. There's a lot of, you guys could be playing Call of Duty instead of having a conversation like this. And thank you for watching my show. But at the same time, you may be playing Call of Duty as soon as we're done. All good. But the point is that there are things in life that make has made the world the way it is, that we need to understand more before we start going at everybody from left, right, red, blue, black, blue, green and purple and polka dots. Like, there's a lot of things that, I probably would not have said or would have understood differently had I just done some homework. And I'm not always saying that it's some sort of school system's fault for not knowing. I mean, library is free, fellas.
Yeah.
Library is free for you and it's free for me. So, the internet is at your house. You can go, you don't have to rely on other people to give you what you need. You can actually, in the information age, go seek out stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's a really good point too. It's like our generation, we have the most information at our fingertips of any generation before. But yeah, a lot of us seek it less than any generation that came before us.
Just wait for it to come.
We're quick gratification people. We're entertained. We get entertained all day. We're consumers. Yeah, but there's a lot more we can be doing on an individual level, and I think we should be doing. So if you know better, do better.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Well, I guess we're coming up on your 40 minutes, but thanks a lot for doing this. This was
Hey,
really
fellas,
awesome.
I appreciate it. So
Awesome.
sorry for the delay. Thank you for having me today. And it was great to catch up with you guys and talk through this. I look forward to being a part of seeing you guys grow and develop and help me understand how to treat the world right and leave it a better place.
Sure, thank you.
Sir. All right. Thanks so much for being here.
We'll see you guys. All right.
Yeah, all right, good one.
See ya.